Can I pour you more? Rebecca asked, her hand already tilting the glass carafe, steam curling upward between us. I nodded, though I hadn't touched the first cup. Her fingers brushed mine when she handed it over. Gentle, practiced. She sat back in the mediator's lounge with that soft, composed smile, the one she always saved for guests or cashiers. Her perfume floated in faint waves, something citrusy, new. I hope you know this isn't personal, she said, stirring her tea with slow, delicate clinks. We've just grown apart. We were great for a while, weren't we? And who knows, we might even be better as friends. I met her eyes, just long enough to let the silence stretch. You'll be fine without me, she added, her smile brightening like she'd rehearsed that part in the mirror. You always land on your feet. I'm the one who needs to find myself now. It would have sounded noble if I hadn't already seen the text thread, the one she didn't delete from her iCloud backup, the weekend yoga retreat with a man who signed off his messages with R and too many heart emojis, the whispered voice note, drunken, sloppy 1:48 a.m., where she said my name mid-kiss, then laughed. If you're still listening and any of this feels uncomfortably familiar, hit like and subscribe. Most people just listen in silence, but that one click tells the team these stories matter. Back in the lounge, I stirred my tea, counterclockwise, no sugar. The mediator hadn't joined us yet, some scheduling delay. That suited me just fine. Do you remember that cabin we stayed at for our first anniversary? She asked, setting her cup down gently. The one with the wood stove and the bad mattress. I nodded again. I still think about that sometimes, she said. You were so attentive back then. I studied her. The careful way she said it, as if she were building a safe landing for herself, planting nostalgia like bubble wrap. She wanted this to feel mutual, clean, something she could tell friends later. It was a grown-up breakup. We handled it so well. Her phone buzzed, screen flashing. She flipped it over too quickly. Anyway, she said, her voice lifting, I'm glad we could do this here. Civil, calm, no drama. I reached into my coat pocket and placed a small manila folder on the table. Nothing dramatic, no loud movements, just that quiet, unavoidable shift in air pressure when something heavier than it looks hits the surface. Rebecca's smile flickered. What's that? Just copies, I said. Copies of agreements, records, timeline. She stared, not touching it, not opening it. Her eyes shifted just slightly to the side, calculating, then back to me. You brought legal documents here? I like clarity. That's not what today's about, she said, her voice tightening. This is just to talk things through. It is, I said. Talking helps when everyone knows the same facts. The mediator finally entered, middle-aged, gray suit, kind eyes. He nodded to both of us, settled into his chair, and asked if we were ready to begin. Rebecca sat up straighter. Yes, she said, then looked at me. I think we've both had some time to reflect. I didn't say anything, just pushed the folder slightly toward the center of the table. The edge of it lined up perfectly with the wood grain. The mediator opened a leather-bound notebook. Before we begin, just to clarify, have both parties reviewed the prenuptial agreement again, particularly Clause 17, subsection B? Rebecca blinked. I didn't. The mediator's gaze flicked between us. I just want to ensure there's understanding. It's a significant clause should it apply. I haven't gone through it in detail, she said. I mean, it's a prenup. We weren't planning to use it. Clause 17B activates in the event of dissolution caused by infidelity, the mediator said. It stipulates retention of primary assets by the aggrieved party. Rebecca's lips parted, then closed again. I'm sorry, she said finally. I can read it out if you like, the mediator offered gently. I waited, silent, neutral. Rebecca shook her head slowly, then turned back to me. You're not seriously trying to enforce that, are you? I tilted my head slightly. No anger, no gloating, just a question in return. Why wouldn't I? Her hands clenched slightly on the cup. A long pause. This isn't what I expected, she said quietly. No, it wasn't. She thought this would be clean, thought she could start fresh with no consequence, that I'd sigh, maybe get a little sad, maybe even thank her for being honest. But I'd done my grieving 4 months ago, the night I found the receipt from that hotel in Monterey. 2 guests. One night, her initials on the check-in form in her handwriting. She didn't even bother to pay cash. Now she sat across from me, trying to steer this like a soft landing, trying to walk out the front door smiling, but the front door no longer led where she thought it did. The mediator cleared his throat. "Shall we proceed?" I nodded once. Rebecca didn't. She just stared at that folder on the table like it might explode, and outside the glass wall, I noticed her car key fob peeking from her purse, the one I'd already had removed from our joint insurance plan at 8:47 this morning. She didn't know it yet, but her world had already begun shrinking, not out of spite, not out of rage, just enforcement. The attorney's office smelled like old wood and lemon polish. Rebecca crossed her legs slowly, the way she always did when she wanted to project calm control. She had her blazer buttoned, a gold necklace catching soft light from the lamp beside her. Her lawyer, a thin man named Harold with weary eyes and a Mont Blanc pen, had been skimming the prenup for the past 7 minutes, long enough for her to start texting under the table. Her nails tapped like a soft metronome. Then he stopped, flipped back a page, paused again. Her phone buzzed once, probably her sister, asking how it was going. "Rebecca," he said without looking up, "can I ask, did you read this part thoroughly when you signed it?" She barely glanced up. "Harold, I was in love. Nobody reads these things like scripture. You said it was just boilerplate." His voice dropped. "I didn't draft this." That made her blink. Now he looked at her. Really looked, then turned the document around so it faced her. He tapped with the back of his pen. Clause 17b, under the thick underline that had once seemed like overkill. If the dissolution of marriage is initiated as a result of confirmed infidelity on the part of Party B, hereinafter referred to as Rebecca M., redacted, all joint assets, including but not limited to property, vehicles, financial accounts, and any equity holdings in shared business entities, shall revert fully and irrevocably to Party A, hereinafter referred to as redacted. Her smile faltered. She sat forward. "This can't be enforceable." "It is," Harold said quietly. "I checked the state's precedents while you were in the lounge. The clause is unusually specific but not illegal. In fact, it's watertight." She laughed once, short and brittle. "We weren't even married when he brought this up. I thought it was just for show." Harold didn't smile. "Did you know he amended it 6 months before the wedding? Initialed by both parties. Notarized. You signed it." She reached for the paper as if it might read differently in her hands. Her eyes scanned too quickly, skipping, then again, slower. Her lips moved, silently mouthing parts of the sentence like a child trying to make sense of a punishment they didn't believe they'd earned. "But I didn't cheat," she said a little too fast. Harold folded his hands. He's already submitted documentation, emails, travel records, a recording. She stared at him, stone still. "That wasn't public. That was a misunderstanding." He pulled out a separate folder. Light gray, slim. "I haven't listened to it," he said, "but opposing counsel says it contains a phone call to a hotel. The check-in date matches a weekend you told your husband you were in Arizona for a leadership retreat." "I was in Arizona," she said. "With another man," he added. The paper crinkled slightly in her hands. "There were issues in the marriage," she muttered, reaching. Harold set his hand lightly over hers, stopping her. "Rebecca," he said gently, "if you have a different version of events, now's the time to bring it, but I need to be clear. This clause strips you of all shared holdings. That includes your boutique shares. He already moved to freeze your management rights." "No," she said, standing. "No, he wouldn't do that. That brand is mine." "It's not. Not legally. The LLC was joint. His contributions are traceable. Your name is on it, but so is his. And Clause 17b nullifies your stake." She shook her head. He wouldn't." "He did," Harold said. The room felt hotter, smaller. She turned in a slow circle as if the walls might give her another answer. "All this time," she whispered. He never said a word. Harold stayed seated, watching her spiral. "That's what you do," he said after a moment. "When you're building a legal case, you don't shout, you don't threaten, you wait, You document, then you file. Rebecca looked at him, something breaking behind her eyes. He wants to ruin me. No, Harold said, voice like paper. He wanted out. You gave him the means, and you signed the terms. She pressed her fingers to her temples. We said we'd stay friends. He didn't respond. Outside the tall office window, the city moved indifferently. Cars passed. Lights blinked across glass towers. Somewhere, a couple probably kissed at a crosswalk. Someone picked out flowers from a street cart. Everything continued as if her world hadn't just tilted sideways. Rebecca dropped back into the chair. What do we do? She asked, voice small now. Harold straightened the documents. We ask for mercy. She blinked again. That's it? He hesitated. You misread the terrain. Now we negotiate, but this clause, this is real. And I have to say, your husband was unusually precise. A soft knock interrupted them. A paralegal entered, handed Harold a sealed envelope marked with her boutique's logo. He opened it, scanned it, and slid it over. Rebecca opened it with trembling fingers. Her own name was on the letterhead, but the content, a board vote, effective immediately. Her removal as creative director. Management rights revoked under joint ownership provision. Interim control assigned to the co-founder, her husband. Effective yesterday, she read aloud. But how? Harold said nothing. She looked up again, face pale, eyes glassy. I thought I was leaving him, she whispered. Harold reached for his pen again. It appears, he said, he left first. The recorder clicked once as it started, that soft, unmistakable mechanical sound that marks the beginning of a truth no one can unhear. Rebecca's breath hitched as my attorney slid the small black device across the polished oak table between them. Next to it, 3 envelopes, white, unlabeled, neatly stacked, a deliberate stillness in his hands, no malice in his face, just duty. Her lawyer, Harold, adjusted his glasses and glanced at her before pressing play. Good evening, came her voice through the speaker, faintly muffled by distance but unmistakably hers. I have a reservation under M. Yes, that's right. 2 keys, please. There was a pause. Then her voice again, quieter, closer to the phone this time. A whisper, not for the clerk, but for the man beside her. We made it. Room 212. Perfect. Then laughter, intimate, careless. The name that followed wasn't my name. Rebecca's hands were still at first. Then her fingers tightened around the hem of her blouse. She opened her mouth but said nothing. The voice on the recorder didn't give her space to. It continued, unaware that months later it would be played in a law office lit by the gray sky of early afternoon. Time-stamped, location confirmed, dated 3 weeks before she'd told me she needed to explore herself. 2 months before she brought up the idea of a mutual friendly separation. 4 months before, she asked if we could stay close for the sake of the memories. Harold exhaled through his nose, slow, embarrassed. My attorney didn't look at her, just tapped the next envelope. Rebecca stared at it like it might bite. She reached with one shaking hand, tugged it open. A single sheet. Color prints. Surveillance stills, hotel lobby. 8:13 p.m. Her smiling. Her entering the elevator. Him beside her, head ducked, hand low on her back. Her jaw clenched. That's not... No one's accusing you of anything. My attorney said softly, this isn't a courtroom. This is documentation, not confrontation. She blinked. But why would you? You asked for transparency, he said. These are simply exhibits, no added commentary. The second envelope, airline records, 2 round-trip tickets, same flight, seat row 1 digit apart, her departure listed as professional development retreat, no forwarding address, no shared itinerary with her assistant, just a calendar block that read wellness reset. She turned to Harold, her voice low but cracking. They followed me. No, he said without warmth. They traced what you left behind. Silence stretched like taut wire. Rebecca leaned back, arms crossed over her chest now, the poise gone, her blouse wrinkled at the waist, hair just slightly frizzed at the edges. Her eyes darted between the envelopes, as if trying to calculate how deep this went, how many other things I'd seen, tracked, heard, and never said. This is petty, she muttered. You're trying to humiliate me. But she wasn't looking at me, she was looking down, and I wasn't smiling. There was no trace of triumph in my stillness. That was the part that seemed to unsettle her most. You could have confronted me, she snapped. Why didn't you just say something? I didn't answer. Harold did. Because confrontation leaves room for negotiation. This, he gestured to the table, this is preparation. Her mouth opened again, then closed. No words fit, not in that room, not in that tone. She had expected emotion, accusations, rage, anything that could be waved away later as a messy split. But this was sterile, paper cuts and timestamps. This isn't who he is, she said quietly, almost to herself. He doesn't scheme like this. Harold's eyes met hers. Maybe you never gave him reason to. Until now. She looked up at me then. Finally. As if seeing me clearly for the first time in months, maybe years. Not the man who used to warm her car in the morning, not the one who rubbed her temples when migraines hit or stayed up late finishing her pitch deck. That man had vanished quietly, without ceremony. In his place was someone she'd underestimated, and that realization landed with no sound, but heavy nonetheless. I never wanted it to be like this, she said, and her voice cracked on the last word, but she said it too late. The truth had already been filed, and I wasn't angry, just done. She tapped the login button 3 times before she stopped breathing. The screen blinked once, then the red message appeared again. Access denied. Please contact your administrator. Rebecca sat motionless for half a second, thumb still hovering above her phone. Then she tried again. Same credentials, same result. One more time, this time on the desktop. Cleared her cache. Incognito tab. Nothing. Her pulse kicked in hard under her jaw. She pushed back from her desk, the sleek walnut one in the office she had designed herself. Floor-to-ceiling windows, custom rug, soft jazz playing low through the Sonos. She opened the banking app. Joint personal account. 0.00. Her jaw tightened. Savings. Unauthorized access. Account owner review in progress. A small dot of sweat formed under her blouse. She clicked into the company card portal. Message at the top. This card has been disabled by the primary account holder. She blinked. Once, twice. No, she whispered, already standing. Her heels scraped against the rug as she crossed to the door, yanking her coat off the rack with more force than she meant to. She was already dialing. Line ringing. 1 tone. 2. CFO's office, Marcus speaking. Marcus, hi, it's Rebecca. Pause. Yes, he said slowly. I'm locked out of the business dashboard. Is there a glitch? No glitch. I can't access the banking either. I know. She stopped walking. Marcus cleared his throat softly. Per the agreement and given activation of Clause 17B, the transition was executed at 8:01 a.m. this morning. You've been formally removed as co-manager. That's not possible, she said. I didn't approve anything. You weren't required to. But this is my company, she said, her voice rising. My brand, my designs, my strategy. This started with me. I understand, he said, quiet. But the documents list you as co-founder under joint ownership. Trigger clause was specific. Infidelity voids managerial claim and voting rights. She was walking faster now. Her heels tapped down the corridor like panic in Morse code. Marcus, I want to talk to legal right now. They were notified already. You'll receive formal notice by courier today. I don't care about a courier. I care about the fact that I was just iced out of my own company. There was a pause. She could hear faint typing. Then, you're no longer listed as an employee. A beat of silence, her voice dropped. What? There was a full access and control transfer. IT cleared your credentials. Legal reviewed everything. Your husband, ex-husband, she cut in, though it sounded hollow, is sole managing partner now. All steps were pre-authorized through the agreement you both signed. She stood still in the middle of the hallway, phone pressed to her ear, the world suddenly too bright, too silent. You could have warned me, she said. I'm not authorized to, Marcus replied. Then, Rebecca, this isn't personal. It's just execution. Click. The line went dead. She stared at her phone. Her own reflection blinked back at her from the black screen, pale, stunned, unfamiliar. Behind her, the hallway lights buzzed faintly. She turned slowly, walked back into her office, sat down, tried logging in again, access denied. She opened her personal email, thinking maybe there'd be a message, something that could explain this, soften it, reframe it. But there was only one new note, subject line, Clause 17B, execution, account termination confirmation, no salutation, just, this notice confirms your removal as a listed manager and access holder per the joint agreement and executed clause. All controls now reside with Party A. She stared at the signature block. Legal counsel. CC-ed to two names she didn't recognize. She scrolled further. Attached. A PDF. Formal. Clean. Time-stamped. She didn't open it. Instead, she leaned back in the chair she once picked out with a clipboard in her hand and fabric swatches between her fingers. Leather. Italian. She had argued for it over budget concerns. She swallowed hard. The company she used to run, the one she built mood boards for, stayed up editing copy for, told everyone was her legacy, now sat behind a wall of passwords she no longer held. She wasn't locked out of the building. She was locked out of everything. And worst of all, it had already happened. She was just now feeling it. Rebecca took the corner too fast. Tires screeched against the edge of the drive as she punched the gate code with shaking fingers. 1986, the year I was born. Red light. Access denied. She stared at the keypad, tried again. Slower. Red. Denied. Her hand trembled as she pressed the intercom. No answer. She pulled her car into the grass beside the mailbox and bolted out, heels crunching into the gravel. The gate was closed, the iron bars taller than she remembered. Past them, the house sat still, golden in the early afternoon sun, familiar and distant like something from a dream she hadn't meant to wake up from. A delivery van idled in the driveway, the back hatch open. A man in uniform lifted one of her shoe boxes into a larger carton labeled Return to Sender, R. Martin. Her handwriting, bold in silver marker, scrawled across each lid. Paris Hall, Spring Gala, do not crease. What are you doing? She shouted, hurrying up the drive. Those are mine. He barely looked up. Housekeeper said anything labeled under Rebecca goes back. I'm just picking up. They're not yours to move. I don't make the rules, ma'am. She ran to the front door. Locked. Of course. Then movement. The housekeeper, Annalise, opened it a crack. Gray cardigan. Apron. Her expression unreadable. Let me in, Rebecca snapped. I can't, Annalise said softly. I live here. Not anymore. Rebecca's voice caught in her throat. What are you talking about? My things are still inside. Annalise stepped forward, handed her a cream-colored envelope, heavy paper, thick, her name on the front, nothing else. Inside, the letter was printed in clean black serif. Per Clause 17B, enforcement your residence rights at redacted address have been revoked. All personal belongings identified as non-joint property are being returned via designated courier. Access is prohibited, effective immediately. Any attempts to enter the premises may be subject to legal action. At the bottom, the firm's name, my signature, the date, yesterday. She looked up, stunned. Annalise, you can't be serious. This is still my home? No, ma'am, it isn't. A bird trilled in the maple tree above the walkway. The breeze shifted. Somewhere inside, the soft hum of the central AC clicked on, and Rebecca realized the house was calm, undisturbed, as if she had never lived there at all. I want to speak to him, she said. He's not here. Then call him. I'm not allowed to. Rebecca stepped back from the door, blinking hard. Her eyes landed on the window beside the entryway. The foyer wall was visible. The painting she hated, my favorite, still hung there. Black brushstrokes across a field of ochre, a storm captured in stillness. She pressed her palm to the glass. In the reflection, she saw what had replaced her own artwork, the custom triptych she'd commissioned from a gallery in Berlin, gone. In its place, a photo wall, family, grandparents, me fishing with my uncle, a dog she didn't recognize. The house was being rewritten. Room Bosbium. She turned, walking stiffly toward the garage where she kept backup keys. The side entrance was bolted. The keypad code failed. She pulled out her phone, scrolling to my name, then froze. The contact had changed, just initials now. M. No photo, no message history, just gray bubbles and silence. She looked up again at the house. The balcony where she'd once hung fairy lights for her birthday dinner was bare. No chairs, no sign of her. The life she thought she could walk back into had already packed up her voice and carried it to the curb. The delivery man passed her again, a final box in his arms, her old journals tied with a pink silk ribbon. "Ma'am, can you move your car?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked back to the gate. This time, she didn't try the code. She just stood there, hand on the cool iron, as inside the engine of her former world kept humming without her. And not a single door opened. Rebecca spotted the ladder before she saw the sign. High above the glass storefront, two men in Navy work uniforms were halfway through unscrewing the gold lettering. Marlon plus Kyo, her maiden name, her identity. The name she'd fought for when I suggested something joint, something shared. The name she insisted on branding every tag, every bottle of fragrance, every gift box for press kits. Now one of the M's dangled by a single screw, tilting like it had lost balance. She stepped onto the sidewalk too quickly, heels sharp against the concrete. "Hey!" she shouted up. "What the hell are you doing?" One of the men looked down calmly. "Work order. Scheduled change. You the owner?" She didn't answer. Just stormed inside, the glass door chiming behind her like a cruel joke. The space was cooler than she remembered. New lighting? No, dimmer settings. The cash wrap counter was clear, no scattered samples, no mood boards. Even the scent was different, less floral, more cedar. She caught her reflection in the oversized mirror near the handbags. She looked wrong, off balance, like someone visiting a museum of her old life. Marla, her assistant of nearly 3 years, peeked out from the stockroom. Her eyes widened. "Rebecca, why are they changing the sign?" she demanded. Marla glanced nervously toward the back, then lowered her voice. "He filed ownership paperwork 2 weeks ago, said you'd been removed from the management roster." "That's impossible. I built this." "I know," Marla said, "but the LLC registration listed you as co-founder, 50-50. Rebecca blinked. "But I paid for the space. I wrote the vision. You brought him on the paperwork to help with financing," Marla whispered. "Remember, he never touched day to day, but the equity, it was real." "No one told me this was happening," Rebecca said. "The board voted," Marla added quietly. "Unanimous." Rebecca laughed sharp and high. "There is no board. It's just me and 3 silent partners." "Not anymore," Marla said. Rebecca stood there, her jaw locked so tight it ached. She stormed past the counter, straight to the back office, the one with the frosted glass door that used to say, "Creative Director, R. Marlin." Now the vinyl lettering was gone, peeled clean, a ghost outline left behind. She yanked the door open. Empty desk, bare shelves, no vase of lilies, no scent diffusers, no corkboard with pinned sketches. Just a sealed manila envelope placed neatly in the center of the desk. She tore it open. Inside, a letterhead. Legal. Cold. "This is formal notice of your removal from all creative and executive roles under Marlin & Co. per agreed terms of your joint ownership agreement and activation of Clause 17B. Brand governance has been reassigned to sole managing partner. Redacted. Name change proceedings are underway." There were 4 signatures below. Hers was not one of them. She stumbled back a step, then another until her hand hit the edge of the doorframe. "Rebecca," Marla said softly from behind her. "They're renaming it M Plus Forge." "What?" "That's the new name. They said it better reflects craft and legacy." "Forge," she repeated. "As in faking? As in rebuilding," Marla whispered. Rebecca's throat felt tight. "They can't rename me." Marla looked away. Outside, a letter was coming down. The R, one screw popped, then another. Rebecca turned and walked straight into the fitting room corridor, ripped open the panel behind the mirror where she used to hide the emergency cash envelope. It was gone. Not even dust. She tried the office drawers. Locked. The cabinet with her design journals, keypad disabled. The place wasn't hers anymore, not even the name on the business license. She opened her phone, pulled up the boutique's Instagram. The bio had already changed. No mention of her. New tagline, "Luxury reborn from strength." She scrolled the posts, Her photos gone, new filters, same storefront but not her handwriting on the captions. There was a knot in her stomach now, cold, twisted, rising. This was the last place she thought she still held ground, the one thing that wasn't marital, the one thing he hadn't touched, but he had. Quietly, legally, precisely. The boutique was never a fortress. It had always been built on joint ownership, and now she wasn't joint in anything, only former. The name coming down outside was the last thing that belonged to her, and it was dangling by a single thread. The apartment was smaller than she remembered from the photos. Beige walls, flat lighting, the kind of corporate temporary furniture you sit on without really landing. Her suitcase leaned against the door, half zipped, one heel sticking out. She hadn't unpacked, couldn't bring herself to. Rebecca sat cross-legged on the edge of the pull-out couch, knees pressed against her chest, wearing a sweatshirt she hadn't touched in years. It smelled faintly like the back of their linen closet, forgotten laundry and time. She stared at the hotel-style welcome packet, Wi-Fi code, emergency contact, garbage rules. A small note from the leasing office welcomed her to Lakeside Executive Residences. No lake, just a parking lot view and a dying potted plant on the balcony. Her phone was face down beside her, silent all day, no missed calls, no texts, not from Marla, not from Harold, not even from her sister. She didn't want to pick it up, but the silence was too loud. When she finally flipped it over, the screen lit up with a soft buzz. Unknown contact, just one line. We can still be close friends. Let me know if you need a referral for short-term rentals. She stared at it, read it again, then again. Her chest felt hollow, like her lungs had been punched through. She knew that tone, light, distant, falsely warm. It was her own tone, the one she'd used over tea in the mediator's lounge, smiling, palm over his, saying, "You'll be fine without me," believing she had the upper hand, believing she was the one walking away with grace. The irony stung like acid. She held her breath as the dots appeared beneath the message, typing, then stopped, then gone. No follow-up, no name, no emoji, just that first message, cruel in its precision, gentle in a way that made it worse. She didn't need a signature, she knew. Her hand tightened around the phone. Not in anger. Anger would have been easier, something to burn off. But this was worse. It was a slow, shameful collapse, the kind that doesn't come with shouting or tears. He wasn't angry, he wasn't begging, he wasn't even cold. He was done, finished, exact, and yet still courteous enough to echo her own words back to her, just twisted. She tossed the phone to the other end of the couch. It landed face down, mute. Across the room, her reflection stared back from the dark TV screen, hair tied up, no makeup, the sweatshirt sagging at the collar. A version of herself she hadn't let anyone see in years, not even him, especially not him. She pulled the blanket around her shoulders. The thermostat clicked, the heater kicked on with a mechanical sigh, and for a long time, she sat there with nothing but that line echoing in her head, "We can still be close friends." A line that once sounded like grace, now it sounded like a verdict. The ballroom glowed with low amber light, all polished silver and white tablecloths pressed razor flat. Crystal stemware caught glints from the chandeliers like little explosions of curated wealth. Servers moved like shadows, wordless and white-gloved, the kind of event where people laughed without showing their teeth and clapped because someone else did first. Rebecca stood just inside the double doors, clutching the invitation like it might be revoked if she breathed wrong. Her name was embossed in gold script, still there, still valid. Ms. Rebecca Marlin, Table 7, Legacy Division Honors. She smoothed the front of her black dress. Not new, not old, safe. She scanned the room for familiar faces and saw a few, former collaborators, mutual acquaintances, industry sponsors. Most offered her a smile that ended before it reached their eyes. One waved politely, then turned back to their drink. The string quartet stopped. A soft ding from the mic. The host stepped up to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us at the inaugural Investor Honors for the Legacy Division. Tonight, we celebrate not just capital, but vision." Polite applause. Rebecca walked toward table 7, heels silent against the plush carpet. When she arrived, she paused. Every chair was taken, except one, hers. She reached for the place card and froze. It was flipped down, folded neatly over the plate, printed underneath, in smaller type, observation only, no voting access, non-participating. She looked around. No one else's had that. Her stomach dropped. She reached to lift the card, but the man seated beside the empty chair shifted slightly, avoiding eye contact. The woman across the table raised her wine glass without acknowledging her. There was no jacket on the chair, no napkin folded for her, just absence. Still holding the invitation, she sat down. No one spoke to her. A fresh round of applause pulled her eyes to the stage. And now, the host continued, please welcome our keynote recipient, founding contributor, visionary partner, and the individual whose enduring impact shaped this division into what it is today. The room held its breath. Martin Ellis. Spotlight. Applause, louder this time. Rebecca turned her head just as I stepped up onto the platform, hands in my pockets, relaxed, composed, a faint smile, no drama, no grand entrance, just a man standing in the light where he'd always stood, whether she'd noticed or not. She felt the blood leave her face, the screen behind me filled with photos, press moments, campaign launches, the original boutique ribbon cutting where she once stood beside me smiling for investors. But in the projection, the crop had shifted. It was tighter, centered. Her face was no longer in frame. I spoke briefly. Calm, gratitude, innovation, legacy. The room nodded, listened, sipped champagne. They laughed when they should, applauded at the right pauses. Rebecca sat silent. Her water glass hadn't been filled. The bread basket passed by her once, then didn't come back. When dessert was served, the waiter set it directly on the place card. No plate, no fork, just observation only. She leaned back, fingers clenched in her lap. One nail dug into the flesh of her palm. The screens shifted again. Charts now. Market growth. Ownership history. The boutique listed under a new name, new logo, a caption, restructured under independent leadership. No mention of her. A woman at a neighboring table leaned in to whisper something to her partner, both glancing at Rebecca's chair, then looking quickly away. She tried to smile. Didn't succeed. The lights dimmed once more for the closing speech. My voice filled the room again, measured, steady, no rage, no mention of divorce, no mention of her, just what came next. When the lights came up, she didn't stand, not right away. Eventually, she reached for her bag. The place card still blocked her plate. She left it there, folded, undisturbed, a polite prison. As she turned to leave, no one stopped her. No one said goodbye. She had been allowed to see, but not to stay. The applause faded as I stepped up to the podium, notes untouched in my hand. No nerves, no tight throat, just calm. The ballroom lights dimmed slightly, isolating the stage in a pool of warmth, the kind that made every eye sharpen, every voice hush. They'd expected a technical breakdown, maybe a forward-looking pitch, the usual strategic platitudes. What they got instead was something quieter. I want to thank you all for being here tonight, I began, voice even, measured. Not just as investors or partners, but as people who've watched this journey unfold from the start. Some heads nodded. A few leaned in. Rebecca was still at the edge of the crowd, standing now. Her hands clutched the strap of her bag like it was the only thing anchoring her to the room. I was once told, I continued, that I'd be fine without her. Silence. I didn't argue, didn't protest. I just waited to see if that would be true. A few eyes turned toward the back, toward her, but not many. But this, I said, scanning the room slowly, deliberately, this isn't a speech about loss. It's not about blame either. Rebecca shifted her weight, didn't move. This is about clarity, I said, because clarity is what makes the difference between chaos and consequence. Trust doesn't shatter because of noise. It breaks in silence and small choices, unspoken shifts, misdirection dressed up as freedom. The room held its breath. And when that happens, I said, you don't retaliate, you don't plead, you don't perform, you just step out of the story. A flicker of movement near the press table. A camera clicked. I didn't reset the company to win. I did it because I wanted every piece of it to reflect something honest. earned, built by people who know the weight of trust and don't treat it like spare change. Soft applause. Not for show, for understanding. Rebecca didn't clap. Her face was unreadable. I looked down briefly at the note in my hand, folded it once, set it aside. I've heard it said that legacy is what you leave behind, but I disagree. Legacy is what stays true when everything else gets stripped away. And with that, I stepped back. Applause again, louder now. Hands, smiles, cameras flashing. Not for spectacle, just for the quiet certainty of a man who had nothing left to defend. A voice piped up from the right. Press badge, notebook, half full. Do you still talk to your ex-wife? The room hushed again. I didn't blink. I don't have an ex-wife, I said, calm as ever. I let the pause hang, then added, just an old friend who made a choice. No smile, just the faintest shift of expression. A line drawn finally in full daylight. And when I stepped down from the stage, the only sound that followed me was the echo of a door, gently but firmly closing. The wind had picked up outside the gala, scattering leaves across the marble entranceway like gold confetti left behind. After a party no one really celebrated, the car pulled up slow and quiet, black, polished, familiar, the kind of quiet exit you planned when you don't want a scene. I stepped off the last stair, buttoning my coat as the doorman opened the car door with practiced silence. 1 foot inside, then a voice behind me cracked through the air. Please, wait. I turned and there she was. Rebecca, no coat, just her sleeveless dress clinging to her in the cold, arms folded tight across her chest, heels catching on the edge of the stone as she rushed forward. She started, stopping short. There must be something left. The doorman hesitated. I didn't. I glanced at him. She's not on the access list. He nodded once and stepped back, still holding the door. Neutral, professional, trained not to notice when the emotional parts start bleeding out. Rebecca took 1 step closer. Don't do this, she said. We were real, weren't we? Her voice faltered on the last word. We built a whole life, she whispered. A company, a home. I made mistakes, but you can't just erase someone. I looked at her, really looked, not with cruelty, not with sentiment, just with clarity, the kind you earn when you stop pretending someone is still who they used to be. I thought, she said, her voice shrinking, I thought we'd still be something, even after all this. I nodded once. We are. Her eyes lifted, a flicker of hope returning. You're the cautionary clause, I said, and I'm the signature below it. Her mouth parted. Nothing came out. No defense, no retort. Just the sound of tires on pavement somewhere down the street and the buzz of a streetlight humming overhead. She took half a breath like she might say my name. I didn't give her the chance. I stepped into the car. The door shut with that soft final click you don't hear until it's too late. Through the tinted glass, she stood frozen on the curb, not broken, just erased. No spotlight, no last word. Just a woman realizing the man she used to laugh at for being so calm it was boring had left her not in anger, not in chaos, but in silence. And silence, it turned out, was louder than anything she'd ever screamed.